Welcome to the Zoom webinar for Jagah Hai. Is there a space? There is a space. This was held at the Amin Gulgee Gallery. I would like to give you a little bit of history of the Amin Gulgee Gallery. This was actually a dream of mine and John McCarry's. I met John McCarry at Yale in 1982. We moved in together in New York in 1987. And then in the early 90s, we moved to Karachi, Pakistan. And ever since then, we've used Karachi, Pakistan as a home base. We always had a dream that, if I ever had a space, we would open it up, not just to me and my work, but to activity. In the year 2000, my father's museum was made, and so was the Amin Gulgee Gallery. Then we decided that this space, we'll open it up, have documentation, and use it as a kind of lab, a laboratory for ideas, energy, and things to happen in my great city of Karachi. Jagah Hai, I would like to read an essay I've written a little bit on Jagah Hai. Okay. The Urdu phrase Jagah Hai can translate both into a statement or a question. Is there a space or there is a space? My co-curators, Sara Pagganwala, Adam Fahy-Majeed, and I decided that we would not give a curatorial brief to any of the 56 artists who participated in our group exhibition of simultaneous performance that took place on November 4th, 2022. They would have to react and interpret this vernacular phrase for themselves. The space for this show would be my gallery and home in Karachi, in which every area of the site, minus the 2 bedrooms and kitchen, would be open for this endeavor. The focus of the show would be performance and would include artists as well as people from a variety of interests and expertise. The audience would have to make their way across all the levels of the building, experiencing performances simultaneously happening over a period of 77 minutes. Sara and I then proceeded to have a series of individual and collective conversations with the artists selected over a period of 4 months for the show. We not only talked about what Jagah Hai meant to them, but also about performance and its place in Pakistan. For the artist who would be traveling from Islamabad and Lahore, these chats happened over the phone. During this process of dialogue, I started thinking what the idea of space meant to me. Growing up in my parents' home in KDA, I shared a spacious bedroom with my sister in her house. When I hit puberty, I beseeched my parents for a room of my own. I helped them design an 11-foot by 11-foot area at the top of the house, which could be accessed by a door 4 feet high. I was thrilled with my attic cave, which could be locked from the inside. This privacy was delicious. It allowed me to read. Through books, I could escape into the quantum space of stories, which took me to many a world. "51 works constituted the tale of Jagah Hai. The points of view were as diverse as the people we chose. The participants ranged in age from 17 to 77. In this experiment, some of the performances chose to reflect upon the question, is there a space? While others embraced the declaration, there is a space. A third category explored the liminal space between the two. The process of curating Jagah Hai was exhilarating and insightful. It seemed to me that so many stories demanded and needed to be told. In spite of being unable to give the artists any monetary compensation for their work due to a lack of funding, the energy we received was explosive. A multitude of diverse points of view constituted the opera that became Jagah Hai. 3 groupings emerged. One was the works of artists who asked, is there a space? These performances addressed urban issues, the existing patriarchy, the female body, gender classifications, the trans body, a vanishing culture, surveillance, the persecuted and marginalized communities, complacency and capitalism. In the second grouping, there were artists who embraced the declaration, there is a space. In this section, some of the artists allowed us to peer within their private, vulnerable spaces. Others became enmeshed within their installations, inside the spaces they had imagined and created. The fourth grouping was of artists claiming their dream space, their spiritual space, and their transient space. And finally, there were those artists who explored the liminal space between the question and the statement. These artists dwelt into the psychedelic space of prophecy, hallucination, autopsy, and reflection. Performance art is a relatively recent phenomenon in the space of Pakistan. Because of its newness and its impermanence, it becomes an ideal mechanism to challenging existing societal norms. Also, it falls under the safety blanket of performance, in which what is expressed is just a drama and thus not real and not to be taken seriously. This allows the artist to slide under the door and occupy whatever space they choose. Performance being very much part of my personal art practice, I know what courage and madness it took for these artists to use their own bodies as their canvas. For me, the act of performance is a transcendental out-of-body experience. It is almost as if the space of your body and mind is taken over by unknown spirits who direct you. After one of these works, I cannot remember clearly what truly happened, and it always seems as if I had been in an oniric dimension. Dreams are lovely. It's the waking up that I'm beginning to resent, states Captain Jean-Luc Picard in an episode of Star Trek, The Next Generation. After the cacophony, exuberance, and protest of Jagah Hai, waking up was difficult, but highly important. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of these incredible artists who made this possible. Thank you very, very much to make Jagah Hai a reality. I would also like this opportunity to thank Tuba Salim, who has been doing our design for our catalog. And we've been working very hard upon the catalog, and hopefully it'll be ready for you soon. I would also like one more opportunity to thank the writers for the catalog, who include Akila Ismail, Nagin Sheikh, Zara Hamdani, Sara, Adam. Am I leaving someone? I'll check and I'll get back on this. Anyway, and now I will leave the floor to Sara, who's going to introduce our panelists and let them talk and express what they want to.
All right, we've got this excellent roster of panelists. We will begin with Sophia Lela. And I'd like to say a few words about her and introduce her. Sophia Lela of CIS practice is multidisciplinary, blending trans and neurodivergent activism, emotional care, and play. Their formal qualifications include a diploma in clinical supervision, advanced diploma in counseling, mediation accreditation, and LLB. Afsar founded Spectrum Therapy and Mediation in 2016. I would like to introduce her, and the floor is all yours.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. So I'm going to sort of extend that Star Trek metaphor that you use, Amin. Because being a fellow Trekkie, I can't resist the temptation. So in many ways, my performance was First Contact, which is one of the missions of Starfleet in Star Trek, which is meeting alien cultures for the first time and navigating cultural differences in the context of not knowing anything at all about an alien culture. So in many ways, this was a dialogue between myself and the audience, both as alien to each other. and the site of dialogue was both my body and the space itself. In many ways, it's also what we would call abject art that is often talked about in terms of disgust or non-normative bodies in a public space or in a gallery space, and how the audience sort of navigates that. What a big theme of my work, particularly the performance element of it, was that I am offering empathy to an audience that is unfamiliar with receiving empathy from a person like me. Bodies like mine are typically seen as objects of either pity or disgust. So what I'm doing is I'm flipping that around by offering care instead. So what I was doing is I was engaging with the audience. If someone looked a bit upset, I would mime. I didn't say a single word during the entire performance, and I would offer care in whatever way, whatever expression, whatever body language I could. And this was a way rethinking of respectability in an art space, in an art gallery, or whatever you want to call that space, where non-normative bodies aren't usually located. I mean, trans bodies, particularly in Pakistan, culturally are associated with begging at traffic signals. Whereas what I'm doing is I'm taking that body, almost transplanting it into a quote unquote respectable space and asking the audience to re-engage with a body like that in a context that they're unfamiliar with engaging with a body like mine. So the question was very much about asking an audience to explore their comfort. So their comfort in receiving empathy, their comfort in also offering empathy in a space that perhaps they weren't used to offering a non-normative body comfort. And that, in a sense, was also disrupting the hierarchy in a space like that, because when you are both receiving and offering empathy, there is a flattening of a hierarchy. The receiver is often in a place of privilege, but if the receiver is also a giver, then that sort of that challenges that power dynamic. So in that context, one of the things that I did was tape slurs that had been used or are typically used against trans people on my dress as a way to challenge the audience to actually see them written down, because those are usually heard, not seen. And for people who are perhaps they've insulated themselves from these slurs, they were really sort of visually confronted with them. And that was kind of fun to sort of explore. At the same time, I'm also very conscious. One of the metaphors in my work is the gaze, the G-A-Z-E, where I use googly eyes a lot in my work. So I was carrying a googly eye throughout the performance. And it's a way of adding levity to a pretty dark situation, particularly given the political situation in Pakistan at the time of the performance, where there was this sort of rising moral panic against trans people, where we sort of very quickly became public enemy number one and sort of a source of all the ills of society in the public consciousness. So I was also, in a way challenging that narrative and perhaps taking people in a place where no one has gone before.
Yes. No, your performance was incredibly powerful. It was incredibly powerful, and I saw how people reacted. Was tremendous. The kind of audience reaction you had and how powerful you were expressing the sentiment.
Performance art, I think it's a very powerful tool because it enables you to have that real-time reaction with people and coerce them to have that. And that's exactly what you were doing, and using Jagah Hai as that platform to be able to do that. And I suppose it gives you multiple facades to be comfortable in, which is not just your own.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that,
Thank you.
Lala.
Thank you, G.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was actually in tears during the performance, and those were actually
know.
real tears.
We
So
saw.
I'm
We
really
saw.
grateful for
As
the
well as
opportunity.
other people as well. We're really overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I would like to go on to our next panelist, Yumna Ali. Yumna is a fourth-year architecture student and is currently pursuing her bachelor's at Indus Valley School of Art and Architecture. She writes poetry and paints besides studying architecture and is deeply interested in performance art.
You have to turn your camera on. I can't see you.
That's right.
Oh, gee.
Hello, you see me?
Oh, yeah. Oh, there you go. Now you're large. Okay. Gee.
Okay, so I want to start with what my interpretation of Jagah Hai was. So I wanted to ask the question of, is there space for us, and is there space for people who go beyond the stereotypical idea of what is allowed within our society? I know there are like certain cultural norms and certain stereotypes that people are expected to follow in order to be accepted. And what I wanted to challenge, perhaps, from my performance was that if you do not follow those norms, will there be a space for you, or will people accept you? Because so my performance started off with me chopping bits of my hair off. That was not the first time I cut my hair off. And I remember the first time I did, and the first time I stepped into the public after doing so, it was not great because I felt like just because of how I presented myself, just because of how my hair looked, people were questioning my identity, people were questioning my gender, people were questioning every aspect of me solely based on one feature, which was something that I wanted to do, I chose to do, and it had nothing to do with me being who I am. So I wanted to do the process of the cutting in front of people and kind of see their reactions and kind of, in a way, hold up the mirror onto them and ask them, does this really define me? Is this something that bothers you so much that you will not give me the space to be who I am? And I started off with just cutting it, and I did not know where it was gonna go. But to my surprise, I remember when I held up the mirror to the audience, a lot of people came and started cutting their own hair as well to kind of become a part of that process. And the feeling that I felt in that moment, that people, there are always going to be people who will not accept you, will not give you the space, but there will always also going to be the people who will try to give you the space that you can feel comfortable in. And that was just something that I did not expect. I did not go into this thinking that people would respond in this certain way. And it was so special to kind of see that, because when I got into performance art, it's kind of like poetry, but it's like physical poetry. It's going into the world, being who you are and letting people see you for who you are and feeling everything that you are. And when I was there in that space, in that moment did feel like maybe there is space for people who do not belong to typical ideologies, and maybe there is acceptance out there that we can find. So in that way, this whole thing was extremely special to me, because it also helped me find clarity, and also helped me feel like there is space, and also helped me kind of see that the performance art is something that can actually like really connect you to other individuals. It's something that, like I said, like poetry, it can really speak to you without uttering a single word, because I did not say a single thing through the entire performance, but so many people spoke to me through their actions, through the way that they looked at me, through their emotions. It was really powerful. So I do think that once we start challenging the stereotypes, we can make space for something that is different.
Yes, I think it was really powerful. I mean, you were cutting your hair, and hair, particularly in South Asia, becomes such a symbol of womanhood and beauty for a woman. And cutting it, and then I remember your hands were in chains, and you were staring into the mirror. That was powerful, you know.
And also about like, hair is just it's a funny thing because when it's on your head, it's a symbol of beauty. But the second it's not on your head anymore, it becomes repulsive.
Or death.
Or
It's
death.
death material. I
It
mean,
changes
it's death.
altogether.
Yes.
And with your performance, there's something about performance art also in putting yourself in such a vulnerable situation where the energy kind of becomes contagious, right?
But it was wonderful that
Yeah.
people were cutting their hair.
Yeah.
That I did not know. That is wonderful.
And you also cut other people's hair. They let you cut their hair as well.
Yes.
Isn't that what?
No,
Yeah.
they came and they cut their own hair, and then I let some of them cut my hair as well. So that was kind of them participating in my liberation of sorts. So
A wonderful, Karachi man.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yumna.
I'd like to go on to our next panelist. Claudia Arnold is undergrad in linguistics, art history, and business at Millsaps College in Jackson, US, where she also did her MBA. She worked with the World Monuments Fund, headed the Berlin office of the German African Business Association, and is associated with Meert's Contemporary Gallery. Claudia, all yours.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. And first of all, my big thanks go out to Amin and Sara for inviting me to join the panel today. And most of all, for giving me the great honor to be a part of this fabulous performance we've been talking about in the last November. And I have to say, I mean, I have never, I don't think in my life felt such positive and such powerful human energy in one building, walking in on the ground floor, and Sara, the curating, amazing, so many artists in one building, it all worked. And it just took you, like that when you came, walking in the cutting edge modern performance of the young kids, walking through all these levels, I mean, all these great performance. From what I could see, because at the very top, I got to do my little stint with the suitcase, with props, trying to perform from the spaces I've lived in. And there were quite a few in my childhood. It was a strange triangle between New York City, where I was born, the old world of Vienna, Austria, and the deep South of the United States. And so that was a very odd little triangle to grow up in. And later my life continued marrying a diplomat in 5 continents. So there's a lot of spaces I've been, and there's a lot of space in my heart for these spaces. And I tried to convey that wearing 2 different outfits that I exchanged and on and off, and tried to use rivers as the flow, taking me along these places and spaces, and had some poetry in there and so on and so forth. But I was just fascinated. What I got to see next to me, the very modern pilot, astronaut pointing into space, and then behind him, this ancient ritualistic drawing in the sand with the little fowl running around live. I mean, it was pure performance. And so, I mean, to answer the question, is there a space for performance in Pakistan? I say 100%. I'm sitting here talking to you from Berlin, but I feel like I'm in Karachi, seeing you all, but Karachi hasn't left me. I mean, you saw No Man's Donkey sitting back here, waiting for me to watch TV with him again. we have Arif Mahmoud's fabulous photograph of a Sufi saint looking down at me and blessing us all, whatever. And we've got Malala sitting here in the window that Adelu Zafar's The End, the performance at Sanat was very strong as well. So I've seen a bit of performance in Pakistan, but this was in November was incredible. It just, it blew me away. I have more things lying here. I mean, from 5,000 years, and I'll tell you why I'm talking about this in a minute. 5,000 years of art in Pakistan, Utrecht Museum in 1963. I mean, I was 3 years old. I guess my mom went there because I found it in her books. Maybe she took me along. I'm a little was too young to remember when I was 3 years old. But of course, 5,000 years of art in Pakistan, and down to, Stefan Winkler's Outsiders. So, I mean, actually, Stefan took me to my first performance as such, but it was already a video, a film. Jagah Hai at V&M Gallery, this beautiful performance of her singing with her mother and her grandmother, that floored me too. So I got to see a few performances, but actually then I wanted to do some research on performance art in Pakistan, and John McCarry's article was very helpful.
Yes,
It
yes.
sums it up so well from 2018.
Yes.
I'll get back to that in a second. Yeah, I mean, what was my first personal experience with performance art? Well, I didn't know what performance art is when I was 9 years old, visiting my grandmother in 1969 in Vienna. From, some summers would be the time to go visit her from the States. And Vali Export, whom John mentions in his article, he goes nicely into history in Pakistan, but also, the other parts of the globe. And so I was visiting my grandmother, and Vali Export did her thing in Munich, albeit with the wooden case in front of her and the two spaces you could reach in. And it was scandalous, especially with my grandmother and her friends. And there were one of the other, artsy people in there who would, knew about Joseph Beuys and so on. I didn't know about anything back then, but I just listened and watched these women so outraged. And as a 9-year-old, I mean, I really couldn't really put it anywhere, but I remember it vividly, how they just thought it was scandalous, old
Right.
Vienna. And there was Vali Export, who you probably know several of her performances. So that was my first personal experience, and that stayed with me, how immediate, how real,
Right.
how shocking it can be. I mean, you take Marina Abramovic, who's, very established, and she, if you repeat a performance, to me, quote me if you want or not, to me, it becomes theater. Yeah. But real performance is immediate. It's the immediate thing that reaches you, because as you say at the end of the article, it's ephemeral, but it also is there to, how did you put it? I mean, well, you can tackle challenging issues that way as well. I mean, in her case, it was feminism. Joseph Beuys worked through all kinds of things, including terrorism in the 50s. But of him, I learned much later, studying art history and so on. But back, I don't know how long I've spoken, but back to John's article for one moment, perhaps with my feeling as an outsider in many ways, because I was brought up between the States and Europe and lived so many places. I really don't know where I belong anymore. Yeah. And I love many places I've been, but I get put in the position to compare. And so, well, actually you and Samira say something in that article. I mean, you say that the awareness in Pakistan are confused what differentiates performance art from the performing arts. I think that holds true everywhere. I mean, look at my grandmother in 69 and her girlfriends just, first of all, they say, what is this? What is, and it's still that way in conservative audiences. I would say universally, people do still confuse that. Then also Zarmeen Shah says that Pakistan is special in the sense that it has this long tradition of dancing and music and so on in the streets. Well, here I beg to insert that, for example, in Austria and Germany, you have for around May, the 1st of May, people dance like crazy around this maypole, or Maibaum, you call it in German. And I mean, that's in a way a performance too. I mean, now it's an old tradition, so it's repeated. You don't go like, oh, wow, what are they doing? Because you know it's going to happen on the 1st of May. But that's a folk tradition.
No, you're right.
Universal, or you have, for example, Celtic the Spitfire dance,
Sure.
or you have sword dance. I think in every culture you have a sword dance.
No, absolutely,
Not just
Claudia.
in
And
Saudi Arabia. You know?
no, absolutely, absolutely. And that there is, that's a very funny line between performance art and performance. It's a very blurred line.
It
And
is.
things step on either side all the time.
Right, first line.
Yes.
Yes.
I think
And yes.
if you repeat performance, it may become tradition, or a drama as such, if it's structured with with a
Right. I
repeat.
mean,
But it's the
it's
impulsive, the moment, the first time.
right,
That's what performing
right.
the performance art is. Yes.
So it provokes. I'd like to introduce our next panelist. Our next panelist is Talal Faisal Ismaili, and he graduated from the School of Visual Arts of Beacon House National University, majoring in sculpture, installation art, and will begin his master's at SAIC in 2023. His art practice aims to focus on the intersections of visual art and life, addressing notions of exclusion, exclusionary processes, and the dimensions they take in context of the everyday and current theories of philosophy and representation. Talal?
Talal, how's your internet?
Yeah, can you hear me finally? I've
Yes,
logged in through my
finally.
mom's
Hallelujah.
laptop.
Save Jesus.
Yeah, so hello everybody. Sara introduced me earlier.
Mhm.
And before speaking about my performance work for Jagah Hai, I would just briefly want to express my take on art generally. So about artistic works, like how all human activity involves the joint activity of a number of people. Through their cooperation, the artwork we eventually see or hear comes to be and continues to be. So there's always those signs of cooperation in the making of a work that are visible at various instances throughout the process till the very end, when it comes when it's actually it's up for viewing, for public viewing. So now coming to speaking about performance art, I see it also as a collective process that without supporting personal may not lead to public expression. So it can be seen as an open-ended medium with endless variables executed by artists and determined to take their art directly to the public. So for this reason, its base, its very foundation, the foundation of performance art has this element of rebellion, anarchy, and it is unwise to find a strict definition because it would then negate the possibility of performance itself. With regards to my practice, it's an interdisciplinary practice that comprises of various mediums. I call them various terrains: so sculpture, performance art, video, and it's an all-encompassing practice that I pursue. And in it, there's an important line of inquiry in contemporary sociology, which concerns itself with the creation of social structures in the course and through all social interaction. And when I define social structure, not just me, but sociologists, they refer to social structure as those macro level social forces, including social institutions and patterns of institutionalized relationships. So social institutions, when I utter this term, I refer to family, religion, media, law, politics, whatever. So these are understood as distinct institutions that are interrelated and interdependent. And together, all of them coming together compose the overarching social structure of a society. So with regards to my performance for Jagah Hai, it was titled, the title of the work was borrowed from a humiliating yet popular phrase from a famous British TV show, The Weakest Link. So this performance piece, it was an extension. It emanated from an ongoing exploration, still ongoing, exploration of wheat, the basic unit of consumption. For me, I denote it as a signifier of growth and expansion in the context of our local agrarian economy. So in the past, even for the Karachi Biennale, in 2017, the first edition, I produced sculptures that out of wheat. So those were just material transformations in urban configurations and settings. So for this performance piece, that is titled The Weakest Link, I was dressed as an entrepreneur and surrounded by a sea of grains, of wheat grains. So I picked each individual grain with a tweezer and tossed them around very casually in a very disoriented manner. So in a way, how I read it, how I frame the work is basically it's something loaded with satire. It's my take on unjust economic systems of governance that are associated with unfair distribution of wealth, oligopoly, monopoly, imperialism, whatever, various forms of economic and cultural exploitation. So it flows from the internal workings of the system, which allows a few to exploit the many. So the many, I see them as those individual grains surrounding me in the performance piece. So the final form that the work took was a sea of grains that are reminiscent of a flawed system that are represented through those holes and openings within the very fabric and structure of the system itself. So this was the work
amalgamation.
No, and you know what I'd like to talk about is the work you did for Jagah Hai, which I really enjoyed. You had silver foil from the head that stretched all the way to from your head to the floor. And so you almost became like a sculptural object. You were standing absolutely still. And, and within that foil, it was also a hallucinogenic space for you, which I found absolutely fascinating.
Thank you, Lal, for sharing that. And with your previous performance that you were mentioning, that also, I mean, we're an amalgamation of everything around us, right?
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Thank you, Dalal.
So very
our next panelist is Omena Khan. Omena Khan is a visual artist holding a degree in fine arts from Indus Valley School of Art and Architecture. Her work discusses the representation of female bodies in art and media and the way the female body is highly glorified, creating an unrealistic beauty standard for women. Omena?
Hi, everyone.
Hello, hello.
Oh, good. Your internet is working. Excellent.
So I would like to start with how lucky I was to be a part of this show, because it was so beautiful and so surreal. And I was also lucky to be roaming around the show because I got to look at everyone. And yeah, so my performance, so my work basically talks about female body and female representation, and how a female body or a woman is looked at by people around us, you know, by the society. So I was trying to critique the idea of how you're looked at as a person, as a female, and how it almost like diminishes your individuality, because people, or you know, male figures objectify you, they also glorify you, and the glorification takes away from, you know, your identity, your individuality. And that's why I was critiquing the idea of looking at a female form as a candy or a dessert, or you know, something that's not a body, or that's not a human and an object. So that's why I chose to wear this very beautiful 10 kilos gown and roam around. And you know, there was this bowl in my hand with a lot of candies in it, and I was giving it away, and I was surprised that I got reactions, and the reactions, like, people were obviously understanding what I was trying to say, but there were people, like, there were boys who were trying to, rip away candies from my dress. And I even said, don't do it. You cannot do it. And they were still trying to tell me, don't give me the candy away from your hand. I just want to rip it away from your dress, which
Wow.
was so, it was so, I was angry, and it was also very painful to, go through something like that you're almost trying to share whatever you're feeling as a girl, but you're also like getting these weird reactions that you're talking about. So yeah, that's what my performance was about. And I would like to say that, being a girl in this society is very, very difficult, because whenever you're going out, you have to look a certain way. And I will try my best to break that practice and, make people aware of whatever is going on, and it shouldn't happen.
Amina, it's amazing that people were trying to. Amina made a beautiful gown. I mean, Amina constructed entirely out of candy. And you could see it was sculpture. It was sculpture. It was absolutely beautiful. And the fact that, they would be, the patriarchy could feel so entitled that they could, grab your dress and try to pull pieces off. It's horrific, but it also shows what is there.
But that kind of reaction, you're just waiting for one person to start, and it kind of snowballs, right? I mean, with Rhythm or with Marina Abramovich also, that.
No, Marina Abramovich asked her to do this. Amina was offering candy.
But even with the
offering it. No, it takes a lot to reach out, break someone's personal space, and that is just horrific. But in a strange sort of way, it sort of your work communicated what was
exactly
there.
what
It's
was
exactly you achieved your purpose.
And also the way that I wanted to say through my performance that, you take my skin away from me, and
Right,
there were
exactly.
people who actually wanted to take my skin away from
Take
me
your
and
skin
wanted
away.
to rip it off. And then some of them, like I was performing, and they would ask for my number and say that you're really beautiful, and can I have your number? Can we
Ew.
I was in
Yuck. Ugh.
I was shocked
served
to
its
how
purpose.
people would, see me, and I was expecting like different reactions of people, being able to see something that I was talking about and empathize with me, and they didn't do that. So I was, the dress was 10 kilos, and the way I wanted to, the thing that I was trying to talk about it, I actually felt it, because I was angry, and it was so heavy that I had bruises on my body, and that's the way I felt my performance.
No, it was a very
And
powerful
yeah.
performance. Talal, is your internet back? Hello, Talal. Talal, we still can't hear you, Talal. Okay, moving on. We can't hear you, Talal. Okay.
Maybe you want to try some other internet connection if you have.
Yes.
Oh, it might be your mic. It might be your mic.
Your mic, Talal. Chalo, let's move on.
All right. So you guys, we're now going to go on to Sanki King. He is a self-taught visual artist who grew up inspired by Arabic calligraphy and the hip-hop culture of the 80s and 90s, which inspired him to do graffiti art and develop a deep love for letters and symbolism. King was an Abraj Art Prize 2017 nominee, and in February 2021 was commissioned by the Louvre Abu Dhabi Museum to create a unique work called Here I Am for the show Abstractions and Calligraphy Towards a Universal Language. Sanki, the floor is all yours.
Sanki.
Hello.
Hi, Sanki.
Let's move it. Come on, chop.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
we
here
can.
we go.
How are you guys doing it?
We're good. We're good. We're rocking, baby.
After so long. I would say, like many of the people said, but because I was a performer, I had the.
Sorry,
easiest
Sanki, can you
performance.
speak up a little bit?
Yeah,
Yeah,
can you
yeah.
speak up, please?
Is it better now?
Oh, much better, Sanki. You're a magician from Dubai.
I would say I had the
Oh, now we can't hear you at all, Sanki. What's wrong with the boys? They can't seem to get the internet together.
I think it's just your mic.
my mic.
There we go. That was much better.
Yeah,
It's better now?
come on, man. Yeah, we can do this.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I was saying I probably had the easiest performance out of everyone because my performance was Cocoon, where I was basically, I live a very private life. I've always lived, and it's very hard for me to have people, like hard to make, like deep friendships, having people in my space. I feel like there's a violation of privacy and I feel exposed, etc. So this performance, apart from being powerful for me, I don't know how powerful it was for the people, but for me, it was very putting myself out there and being very vulnerable because I was there with my books, and during days of the show, I was watching this online series called Young Pope, and I had 2 or 3 last episodes of the second season to go, and I watched them. So that was my performance. I actually completed the season. I had no idea like what was going on, how many people, like how people were reacting, etc. I was totally immersed. And what I love about performance art is that we hear this from like for decades, and even now during talks all over the world in all languages, we hear that okay, cinema is like the top evolution of art because you have music, you have acting, you have paint, etc., etc. But what I love about performance art is that like the performer is creating an entire movie all by themselves. Like during the performance, they are the producer, the director, the actor, etc., etc. And it's also like you are, because there's this thing in every artist that sharing their work is like exposing a part of themselves or giving life to a part of themselves using the medium of their choice and then sharing it with the world. But when you actually perform it with your body, there's this one thing is the pressure of performing. The other thing is that you feel like you are giving out secrets. I don't know how relevant it is for other people, but for someone like me, I started doing graffiti when I was about 11, 12 years old. I painted my first wall when I was 14, and until I did my first show in 2016, I've always had this like I always painted after midnight. Even for my commercial projects, I would do like I didn't want to be looked at. I didn't want to hear anything. I didn't want anyone talking to me, etc. Then it's an interesting evolution for me, for my own self, looking at myself, how I started as a graffiti artist. And you know, in the graffiti world, you have this like Superman and Clark Kent. Like you are this nerd during the day, but when you're working either in the studio or especially outside, you have this um, superhero identity where you create a work and then you go back into your cave, into your lair, and then who knows who made that work, etc. So in that sense, like performances like these, I thank Amin for pushing me to do performances. I think this was my third or fourth one with you.
Yes.
And my close friends, my family, they've always been very about like how I'm going to do it. I'm just like so private. I don't talk very much until like unless I know someone really well. So this was a kind of, for me, it was more than performance. It was, I would say, testing my own boundaries, like how vulnerable can I be? So yeah, so for that, I don't know how many people know this on the panel, but Amin and I go like 10, 11 years, and he's always been like, oh, like do this, and he's like always pushing me, and like it's just at times it has been a lot for me to digest and to be, there's always been this fear of the unknown, and so yeah, this pushed me. I would say this. In conclusion, I'll share this story by Carl Jung. One day, one of the asylums that they were under Jung, they brought a patient who claimed to be Jesus. So they brought it. They asked Jung to come to the patient's room, and they said, "Okay, this person claims to be Jesus," and he said, "Bring him to X and X room." They brought him to that other room, where they had another patient who was there for 2-3 years already. And he asked all of his assistants to leave. He brought this a patient into the room, and he said, "Mr. John, this is Mr. Smith. He claims to be Jesus." And he said, "Mr. Smith, this is Mr. John. He claims to be Jesus." And he left the room, closing the door behind him. And he came back a few hours later, and Mr. John was sitting on the mattress, and the other guy was standing next to the window, scratching violently on the window. And both of them looked at Jung, and one of them said, looking at the other, he said, "He disgusts me." And the point of this story was, it's part of an essay by Jung where he talked about how it is impossible for a person to know themselves entirely, and there always needs to be mirror. There needs to be a person in every person's life, or a group of people with them, that act like mirror, which show them things about themselves which they don't see, or maybe they see but they consciously ignore. And Amin has been that person for me in art, because a lot of things that I've lived a very painful, very violent life, especially my childhood. A lot of like tragedies, fights. I've survived 2 suicide bomb attacks in Karachi. A lot of shootings and muggings, etc., etc. So one thing to be a part of an experience, whether personal or in art, and then it changes your work. But first and foremost, changes you. And then, yeah, so this is what I wanted to say.
Well, thank you, Sanki, and thank you for that incredible, for your cocoon work. You were perched upon one of the platforms of my stairwell, and I know how difficult this is for you. And I know, because I've known you for a bit, and I know how intensely private you are. And you were sort of, you were revealing yourself. You were being naked. And it was difficult, Sanki. And thank you so much for that work.
Really beautiful. And just like, how you were mentioning, you're unconscious and you're conscious. And somehow I feel like in performance side, you kind of confront all of these things. Right. And it gives you that space to get out of yourself, and be somebody else. Thank you, Sanki. I'd like to go on to our next panelist. Wait, should we go back to the lab?
Time at the end. Okay. And hopefully by that time.
All right. Okay, so our next panelist is Sara Pagganwala, who received a bachelor's in fine art from Indus Valley School of Art and Architecture. Her work revolves around the idea of space, tangible and intangible, physical and metaphysical. Pagganwala lives and works in Karachi and has exhibited numerously, both locally and internationally as well. Lujan?
Hi, guys.
Hi, Lucan.
Hi. So I think I'm going to start with the pointer that you made, Amin, about the fourth category, I believe, which was liminal spaces, which is actually a core concept of my practice itself. And I basically talk about these in-between spaces, right? And wherein there are different planes of existence. And I mean, in the most mundane possible way to explain this would be, for instance, if my eyes see a visual, right? And before my brain conceives what that visual is, that in between space, after my eyes see something and before my brain conceives what it is, what do we call that in between space? And I mean, in my practice, I call these flash spaces. And because we have not yet coined it in language, we don't acknowledge these in between spaces. And it is these in between spaces which I feel are actually probably more important or more pertinent
No, you're our first woman whose internet has
as they are the process of becoming. We have not become yet, but they are. Sorry?
No,
Hello?
go on, Lucan. Yes.
Okay. So as I was saying, so I talk about these different planes of existence, and we are in that while we are existing in this plane of existence, in this realm of existence, we are at the same time in multiple different planes as well. And that is what memory also constitutes of. Everything that I am, for instance, saying right now is in a millisecond or even probably less than that becoming into memory. And so there are these layers and layers of spaces that we are living through each and every second or millisecond that is passing by. And which kind of just proves how vast the whole idea of space itself is. And so there was this book by Gaston Bachelard, wherein he kind of breaks space in 3 levels. The most rudimentary would be physical space, which I mean, you could call the 4 wall corners of the building. And then a level ahead of that would be how you experience that space and what your experiences make of that space, right? And then the most interesting to me would be the which is imagined space self.
Yeah.
The space which you create within yourself, right? And that is so multifaceted, and I feel so subjected to so many different people. It's just, you cannot put a cap on that, right? And that is what I talk about in my work. And these liminal spaces where you are not here, but you are there. But you are everywhere, right? The ubiquitous quality of being in so many different places at one time. So my performance was also questioning, we talk about performance wherein your body is your canvas. So I wanted to question that notion and pick up the concept of body and kind of make that absent from my performance, and then see how that turned what that turned my performance into. And I wanted to kind of see what the people's reactions would be if they were not viewing me, but I was kind of viewing them instead. So I had a walkie-talkie in my hand, and the other walkie-talkie was being passed around to different. I had about 5 people on standby across the floor, and I was watching from the glass gallery above. And so I was passing around this one walkie-talkie from person to person, and I was talking to them on the other end, and I was giving different prompts to them, and I was saying comments like I was talking about the color of their shirt or the way they had done their hair. So the whole process of kind of seeing them feel uncomfortable, and I mean, even they had this kind of wonder in their eyes where they were trying to find me in the crowd and know where I was seeing them. The whole process of being seen but not seeing themselves, right? And so it was quite funny because I was giving them instructions and I was telling them, I had these little pockets, these little plastic bags taped around the entire space. So I was giving them instructions like, go pick this up and put this over here, go write this, or go, shake the person standing next to you, shake their hand, or walk up to them and say hi. And it was really strange because a lot of people felt uncomfortable to do that, but a lot of people were actually doing it. And they, a lot of, I mean, there were joint performances happening wherein the one walkie-talkie was being shared amongst different people, and I was having different reactions come forth. So it was really interesting to see that dynamic where you extract the artist from you extract the visual aspect of the artist from the performance, and then see how that kind of really changes the dynamic of the performance and the viewer. And it was really fun. It was like a fun, quirky way of changing the gaze, right? It was imposing. And in my work, it's always, there's this always, even in my sculptures or my installations, there's this performative element wherein I'm maneuvering the people through the experience of my work, as if I'm the puppeteer, and I'm trying kind of taking control of that. So that's what this was as well.
Yeah. No, absolutely, Lushan, and the idea of surveillance, which becomes very relevant in our time. Surveillance and control, and I found that really, really interesting about your work. It makes it very timely.
Yes, and there's a very voyeuristic aspect to your work.
Yeah.
And it's really lovely how you speak about liminal spaces. And one is just to wonder about all the multiple trajectories that could exist if they were actually accepted in one plane. What would happen then? Thank you.
Yeah, if everything would exist at the same time together.
Yes.
It does. It does, though. Everything does exist at the same time.
It does, but we cannot see it. We cannot attain it, right?
Right, but it does still exist.
Of course, always.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Lushan.
Lushan.
All right, go on to our next panelist, Danish Raza. Danish Raza received his diploma in fine arts from Karachi School of Art, followed by master's degree in mass communication from Karachi University. He is interested in spirituality and metaphysics and incorporates this in his works. Human rituals are also part of his influence, whether they're religious, spiritual, societal, or personal. Danish, all yours.
Here we go.
Hi guys.
Hello.
First of
Hi,
all,
Danish.
can you guys hear me?
Yes.
First of all, thank you, Amin, and Sara and her whole team, Adam and
Adam.
John.
Yeah.
You guys are wonderful, and the performance art and everything we have been doing for the city and for Pakistan, for the art scene is we really appreciate that. And me, and whenever I get the chance to work with you guys and perform, it's always a pleasure. Okay. First of all, about myself, I'm not a religious person, but I consider myself spiritual in a way, and I kind of see the beauty in the chaos. I kind of say that I can see the beauty in the chaos. So whatever happened is that when I was performing, what I can say, and I can just tell anyone who has not done that kind of thing, is that if you want to have an spiritual experience, do some performance art. It's the easiest way to feel that thing where you disconnect yourself, your routine, your persona, and you become another person, and you go into a different space, and you feel differently, you understand things differently, and you perform differently. I'm personally a very shy person. I don't do, I actually can't do things like you guys do, and how Amin does things and have everything. But whenever I get that in that state of performance, everything is just fades away, and there's this task that I have to do, and that's a wonderful feeling, and that's a wholesome feeling. And if you guys were wondering what I was doing at that performance at Jagah Hai, it was a ritual, as you and many had imagined and commented. But whatever at that time was happening, and I was reading and very much into AI. Right now, most of you had a little bit of experience with Chat GPT and AI art generating softwares and all. So now you understand where we are going right now. Like the CEO of Microsoft, he has declared that the creation of AI is bigger, achievement of humanity than, discovery of fire. That's what he has said. So whatever we have been doing, and right now, the AI art and everything, it can do anything. But we artists used to, feel proud that the robots can't, create something. They just, mass production things. There still are, but the AI thing is now taking over everything, and is going to take over uh, ev- literally everything. The businesses, uh, the governments, doctors, lawyers, everything. So there's this concept. It's called Rocco's basilisk. It's a concept that when the AI is going to grow uh, exponentially at that speed, in 50 years or 100 years, it will gain power to transcend time and space, and it will punish all those people who were not participating or helping it to achieve this particular state of in control of the whole universe. So what I was doing, I was trying to tame the basilisk. I cannot kill the basilisk now, but I can tame it. I was trying to blind the thing. So we can have a little bit of a chance. The humanity, I was trying to give humanity a little bit of chance. And the thing I was using, the sacrificial animals, and it was a surrogate blood, and the whole marking thing. When as a shaman, I was making marks, and then I was blinding it. I'm making its eyes, and blinding it. I was putting out its eyes, like Harry Potter thing, maybe, I don't know. But that was the thing. And the whole thing with moving in such a way, and the whole ambience, the fire. And then another thing that I didn't plan, but that happened, and I have to thank Babar Sheikh for the absolutely beautiful music. So what I didn't plan at the time was that how my rhythms and the lines would work. So I was actually moving at the rhythm of his music, and that was, I didn't plan it. It was happening at the same time. He was playing with his guitar, and I was moving, and maybe people didn't notice, but my whole rhythm was, I was creating the notes he was making through his guitar, but he didn't know that. So that was, it was amazing. And then handling those checks, making sure that I don't step on them, and that thing was also I need to be very, yeah. So that was
That's
difficult.
what Danish says. Isn't that the wonderful thing about performance? Is when the unknown happens, when you react to your surroundings, when something else happens within this whole structure, and it is not theater. You sort of like you transcend into your actually into your shamanic level.
Yeah.
For those of you who might know Danish, you can probably, from who he is and the profound performances that he does are something truly mind-blowing. Thank you, Danish, so much. And upon mentioning Babar is also our next panelist. I'd like to introduce Babar. Babar Sheikh is a filmmaker.
Hi,
Hello.
hi, Babar.
Babar Sheikh is a filmmaker, academic, musician, and audiovisual installation artist. Working comprehensively for the development of film education in the country, he has directed several ad films, documentaries, and short films. He is also part of Chand Tara Orchestra, a performance act that borders between traditional folk and modern contemporary music. Babar.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for organizing this lovely and I'd really agree with Claudia that somehow the magic and the energy that was there on that particular evening, I kind of feel the buzz online, and it's quite interesting. Yeah. I think so. Thank you, first of all, Danish, for mentioning me, and I'm very, very honored that in some way this kind of, oral soundscape that was being created was, kind of interlinking into your work. That's beautiful. I don't want to take too much time, but I would say my performance was very primal. It was very rudimentary, back to the roots. For some of you who've known me for a while and not known me recently, of course, now I work in academia and film a lot. But my first kind of flirtation with performing arts was through Pakistan's first extreme metal band, like the first death metal band of Pakistan back in the early 90s. And that's how I started. And when I went to Amin with this idea, and I also like to mention, and I was hoping somebody would actually mention it, but it happens with everyone, I'm sure, who walks in there, talking to Amin with their ideas, and how it's kind of speaking to Amin is kind of like, it's like a pressure cooker where you kind of throw in and Amin puts in his ingredients, which also are completely spontaneous. And of course, there is a thought behind it, but what you come back and you're not supposed to open the pressure cooker over there. You're supposed to be back home. And, I remember seeing Sara and Amin that afternoon, and very quickly we kind of, my idea was taken, and then, it's a very thorough, a very immersive brainstorming session that kind of happens. And I believe my performance called Irtika or Intiha, which actually translates to evolution and extreme. And I believe for me, it was also not just about performing art. I would definitely not differ with anybody's opinion, especially what Claudia and Amin were just saying about performance art. But I believe it was a space where I, after so many of years, where I kind of, it's almost like people somehow join the dots and they say, oh, you're that person who used to do that crazy music. And I'm like, yes. And somehow, sometimes I stand in front of the mirror, I think maybe I'm not that person anymore. But this performance, and I think this space almost provided something like I called my performance like a self-archival performance through identity and memory. But for me, it was also a place of khud shanasi. In Urdu, there's a word called khud shanasi, which means self-realization in a broad or self-knowing. So it was for me an interesting space where I could be myself, that very rudimentary primary being that I was when I met Amin first in the mid 90s. It kind of brought me back there, and I'm so happy I still had some of the paraphernalia from performing in those days where I used to perform in Europe as well. And half of those performances were about how you are presented or how you present yourself on stage. And I think for me, Jagah Hai is definitely, there's space, but there is space for everybody to be themselves. And I would like to sum it up on that. Thanks.
I have to say that Babar was situated on the highest point of my roof. And next to him was Aisha Tur, who was burning her dupattas again and again and again after wrapping them around her face. And his sound united the roof, cordant and discordant. It was extremely emotive and powerful, and it brought the entire roof space together.
I think, Baba, your sound that you were emanating was acting as a catalyst for a lot of performances, right, whether consciously or unconsciously. And one person who I'd actually like to get onto our next panelist was Shima Kirmani as well. And I'd like to introduce her because her work was in direct tandem with what you were doing. Shima Kirmani has studied many forms of Indian classical dance and has been teaching dance since 1980. Her life and work have been written about in the New York Times and also been covered by the BBC and Al Jazeera. Kirmani is also the founder of the feminist theatre group, Tehreek-e-Niswan. Her dance is a combination of both modern and the classical. Shima?
Am I here? Shima in the house?
Huh?
Maybe we can come back, if she joins us, and then we can come back to her.
Well, that actually sums it up because one of our panelists was unable to join us.
Well, maybe she'll join. Shima is at a march for the.
Maybe I should call
You should call her up. I would like this time. Is Pomme, are you there?
Sorry. I'm here.
Oh, yeah, you are, Shima.
Yes,
Honey,
yes,
I thought I lost you.
No.
Yay,
Actually,
Shima.
earlier I was in the car. I was driving back, and so anyway. So
Wonderful.
thank you,
So good
thank
to
you
see
for
you, Shima.
having me here. It's such an honor.
Oh, it's such
And,
an honor for us to have you, Shima Jan.
Thank you. So what do I talk about? Tell me. Yes, so this event that you all had put together, Jagah Hai, I think it was a wonderful idea to start with, because for me especially, it has always been an issue कि जगह है ही नहीं आर्टिस्ट के लिए, जगह है ही नहीं डांसर के लिए. But in spite of all of that, I've always tried to find my own jagah, my own space, and push that boundary that, dance is not acceptable, and etc. We won't go into that. But I just believe that we all have to just find and make our own spaces possible. I'm happy to dance on the roadside, on the pavement, at a bazaar, or anywhere, wherever I can find some space. Because I think this is such an important thing, that we push forward our boundaries, we push to find our spaces, and we assert the fact that, these spaces are for us. Who has the right to take over this public space or private spaces or galleries or anything? It should be there. They are there for people who want to use them. And I thank you, Amin and Sara, that you made that possible. You made your space available to all of us. And that's what I did in that performance. I just allowed myself to flow into that space, and I tried to involve people. I tried to make it as interactive as possible. I would call them, I would invite them to participate in my whatever was the mood of the time, which was sometimes sad, sometimes happy, sometimes joyous, sometimes it's about desires, about wanting more, about our dreams, etc. And it was nice that people around me upstairs, in the space that I was in, we were all, I was sort of making a conscious effort to go around them and interact with them and bring them into my space as well, so that they don't feel that, no, this is not available for them. All that space was available for everyone. So I didn't want to make it such that my space is only mine and you must not come into it. And it was a pleasure, and it was enjoyable. It was fun. And I wish that we have more and more of such occasions to just move freely. That is what it is. And to say that, my body is nothing that I need to be ashamed of, and that the movement within the body is something so beautiful. It is a mystical experience to move as you are flowing into that space, and to feel that you are occupying a space, and everything, and that space becomes meaningful. you know, it talks. It is, there's a dialogue going on between me and the people who are moving around, talking or watching, or some of them were performing their own thing. And so we were creating a dialogue, and this was a spontaneous dialogue. And that's what I thought I would do. I would just keep it spontaneous. I wouldn't decide beforehand, okay, oh, there's a space up there which Amin and Sara have given me, and I'm going to do this in that space. No, I just, you know, let it allowed myself to improvise around it and to just be spontaneous about how I felt at that particular moment. With somebody would come close to me, or somebody who would push away, or somebody would be just watching, or videoing, or whatever. So thank you.
No, thank you, Shima, for existing in my country, in my context. No, this is really important. Things don't happen in a vacuum.
Yes.
I remember when, you know, when I was young and watching one of Shima's works and how inspiring it was for me. Because Shima, you know, thank you so much for existing here, John. Because look, a lot happens in Berlin, in London, in Paris, and in New York. But what I'm interested in is my shithole of Karachi.
Exactly.
Things that happen here, because that is relevant for me, Shima. And you know, you have not only created space for yourself, you've created space for so many other people, Shima. And I'm so honored that you always say yes and join in and participate. And it's such an honor to always have you aboard. You are a power.
Oh, thank you.
You're like
Thank you for saying that.
One thing about Shimaji is, you know, every time that she's been a part of it, she's always been a great inspiration, because you, I mean, your work, you yourself, you always remind us to have this fearlessness, to claim space within your own skin. And that is something, you know, every now and then you kind of forget.
Right.
And you need these reminders to be able to do that again, and have like this fearless audacity to be able to do so.
Thank you, Sara. Thank you for saying that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really, it was a pleasure, and I think it was so wonderful to be up there under the open sky. That was another, you know, it really did become a magical. There were, I felt in that time that I was performing, there were almost magical moments that happened. And they just happened, you know, because we allowed it to happen. And so that was lovely. Thank you.
But Shiva, you're magic. You are, John.
And that is a wrap.
No, let's open the floor up.
For all the panelists.
All the panelists, whoever else has joined. Is Pomme there? Hello, Pomme. Are you there?
No.
She's not. Okay, because she wanted to say, okay, I'll just mention something. Pomme was a lighting director, and I collaborated with her. In fact, Shima was part of one of my performances, Sola Singhar, back in the 90s. And you know, my performance trajectory started with fashion on the catwalk format. And that it was after the dictatorship. And another thing I might add is a lot of dancers left Pakistan during the military dictatorship of Zia-ul-Haq, but Shima Kermani did not, and insisted and continued to dance in Pakistan. And, you know, these are the people we look up to.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
Then
so
we
much.
can wrap it.
Yes.
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 Thank you everyone for joining us, for being a part of Jagah Hai and taking a part in this webinar. We are truly grateful for all of you, to all of you.
Yes, thank you
I'm so glad I made it in time. You know, I was at this minority rights march, and I was running back that I could make that.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, John. And thank you to all the artists that made this possible. The bravery, the courage. I know how difficult it is. One thing is to do it via video or performances via other means. But when you put your own body out there, when you expose yourself, there's a reveal. And there's a reveal to yourself as well. And I would just really like to thank all. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
So much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye from Berlin. Bye from Berlin.
Bye.
In the spirit of performance and my passion of wanting to translate between cultures, I left behind a little gift for Karachi. thanks to Amina Saeed, because I had no support from anybody. It was a space
Right.
I took translating. And the only reason I'm mentioning is because Talal spoke of social structure and
Right.
Babar spoke of music. So the
Right.
author of this book from very Berlin, she's a bit rebellious, radio music director, comes from wild music. She wrote a book on her personal tragedy, but it's very feminist and it's very strong. I decided to translate it out of the blue. Amina published it in Pakistan. You can
Can we
find
see
it
the
at
book?
Liberty. I mean, this is self-promo now, but y'all
Oh,
inspired
yay!
me. It's in the
No,
spirit
no,
of
books
my,
are good.
huh?
Books
Anyway.
are good, Claudia. Show
What's
us
it-
the book.
From my wounded heart with love.
Yay! On
Yay.
that note, from
Have a
our
lovely
wounded
day.
hearts with love to
That's it.
all. Bye-bye.